essentially the outcome from this COP is going to set the detailed rules for global action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In particular, as I said, it is going to set the detailed rules for how carbon markets can play a role in that transition. But it's also going to set out rules for how we get proper transparency, so how it's possible to determine that countries are actually doing what they say they're going to do in terms of reducing emissions and hitting their targets, but also getting some standardization around how countries set their nationally determined contributions, so that we have kind of a common starting point in terms of that overall assessment. So making sure that countries are using the same target year, for example. So this kind of clarity, I guess, about what countries are signing up to do is really important from a business perspective, because it essentially sets the direction as to where future investment will be needed, and in particular what assets might be stranded in the future. It's pretty clear that it's not just governments that have a role to play in terms of addressing climate change and reducing emissions. Business, and particularly the investment sector, have also got an absolutely critical role to play as well. And we've seen that very much evidenced by business getting on board, and by many corporations themselves also signing up now to a net zero target by 2050. And obviously business needs to kind of understand the rule book within which it is playing as well, and in particular what mechanisms or measures it can use to ultimately achieve those net zero targets that are being set. So as an example in the energy space, the International Energy Agency notes that in order to reach net zero by 2050, we can't have any more investment in new fossil fuel projects or in unabated coal power plants. By 2035, we need all passenger vehicles to be sold as electric vehicles. So the amount of investment that needs to come into the energy sector is phenomenal. The prediction is that we need a total annual amount of $5 trillion by 2030 in order to transform our energy sector. And of course, it's not just energy that needs to transition. There are also significant transitions and transformations that are needed in the transportation sector, in industry, in agricultural sector, and across the built environment. All of those sectors also contribute significant emissions globally, and so steps need to be taken in those sectors as well to start that downward trajectory. So in terms of this COP, which, as I said, is being hosted by the UK, Boris Johnson, the UK's Prime Minister, has come up with a pretty snazzy catchphrase, which is coal, cash, cars and trees. So that means no coal should be used in developed countries by 2030, so ceasing coal use in the next 10 years, and then in developing countries by 2040. As I said, facilitating a full transition to electric vehicles, honouring that $100 billion climate fund pledge that has been made by the developed world to the developing countries, and then protecting nature and really looking at how we cease land clearing at scale that's currently happening across the globe. So I hope you've found that overview of interest and informative. We do intend to hold some future sessions. So we're going to be doing a detailed session on Article 6 and the use of carbon markets to facilitate the transition. And we will, of course, be holding some sessions after COP to update you on what the outcomes were and what they mean for business moving forward.